Hello and welcome to today's presentation. We are going to be talking about instructional design models. My name is Jess Boudry and I will be your presenter today. Today we are going to discuss a little bit about what instructional design models are, and we're also going to look at two specific instructional design models that really align with different elements that we are looking for teachers to implement in their classrooms and in their courses. And at the very end of the presentation will be a long list of resources that you can use to further your learning about these topics, or just get a little bit more information than I share with you today. The first thing that we're going to talk about is just the instructional design model and what that looks like. So, when we're talking about the instructional design model, we're talking about different frameworks that are used to develop learning materials and learning experiences or environments for students to learn in the way that works best for them. Um, when we talk about these next two specific instructional design models, what we're looking for is in these two design models, not only do they focus on differentiation of instruction for our students that have varying needs, whether that's special education, whether that's just maybe visual, audio learners, whatever it might be, we're differentiating our instruction to meet the needs of all students, even our gifted students. These design models also include scaffolding. So that would be including the resources and the different tools and strategies that help students continue to build on their learning and to be able to be successful in the assessments that we're giving them. They also build and activate prior background knowledge, which allows them to make connections to their personal life and also what they're doing in the classroom, which then brings us to the being culturally responsive in our instructional design models, which means we are making the instruction connect to real life issues or real life situations that students are applying that knowledge. So when we look at the two instructional design models that we're discussing today, one of them is Gagne's 9 Events of Instruction. This was created in 1965 by Robert Gagne, and this was created to provide a way for teachers and educators to meet the needs of all learners and all learner types. In that, he created 9 steps for you to design your instruction so that you're meeting those needs. The other one we're going to talk about today is the backward design, which was developed by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTighe in 1998. That was focused on looking at the outcomes before looking at the activities. That really promotes students and allows students to make their own path of their learning to get to that final outcome. So when we look at the first two, when we look at the first model out of the two, this is the 9-step process that Gagne had created. And the first 3 steps of gaining the attention of our learners, informing our learners of the objectives, and then stimulating recall of prior knowledge. In those 3 steps, we're not only building on their background knowledge by having an icebreaker or having an activity that makes them think about something that they're already familiar with and connecting it to what they will be learning about. But we're also then giving them the knowledge of these are your objectives and you may already understand some of this. So we're building that background knowledge and also being culturally responsive by making sure that we're making it relevant for our students before we even start the learning process. In steps 4 through 6, this is where we are presenting the content as educators to our students, providing the learning guidance where students are learning, we're helping them. This is where scaffolding comes in. You're providing the resources and the tools that they can use in order to learn best. And then also we're building upon that background knowledge. So we're activating the prior knowledge that they have and building upon it as we move forward. The differentiation also comes here where you're including different resources and tools for students to use. But also, when we think about that step 6 where they're practicing and we're eliciting that performance, this is where you can decide as a teacher, or if as an educator, if you are assessing different things based on an IEP goal, this is where that differentiation also comes into play. And steps 7 through 8, this is again differentiation and scaffolding, because you're providing feedback for students as a scaffold to use for that final outcome or that final assessment. And you're also differentiating the way you assess students. So could it be that you're assessing them verbally instead of you're making them write a paper? Could be you're assessing their knowledge in whatever way they choose to share it with you. And you could provide feedback in a variety of different ways as well. These are all pieces that hit on and touch on that differentiation and scaffolding piece. And then step 9 is where our students are culturally responsive, because they're enhancing what they've retained already, and they're transferring that knowledge to the job, or in this case, to the real world. For high school students and college students, it might be to their specific job. In middle school and in elementary school, maybe not so much, but they're still transferring it to that real world, to maybe their community, or maybe they're thinking about the communities that are around them. Maybe it's to a organization that they are part of. You're making that connection so that that curriculum is becoming culturally responsive. So that's the first instructional design model. The second one is the backward design. And this one doesn't have 9 steps. There's only 3. But again, this was created to look at the instruction and design backwards. So the first thing over here that you'll see is that you create learning objectives, and you're trying to figure out what is the ultimate goal of our instruction. In here is where we get that real heavy part on the, or heavy like relation to culturally responsive instruction, because when you decide what you want your students to perform or to demonstrate or to show at the end of the unit or whatever it may be, this is where you get to decide how you want them to apply that knowledge, or if that's what you're assessing. That brings you to the next step, which is determining how you're going to assess your students along the way, whether that's formative and summative assessments. What does that look like, and how do students get assessed? So here's where you get to differentiate for your students. Does it have to be a paper? Does it have to be a test where it's multiple choice and essay? And does it have to be those, or can you decide how you want to assess certain groups of students, or how do you change that to be universally designed? The last step in here is identifying what students need to do on the assessments and how you're going to create activities and resources to get to that point. So this is where you build on the background knowledge that they have. Maybe you start designing your first activity that will help them get there, knowing what you need to do. You're building the scaffolds that you have, organizers, you have articles. You also are thinking about, do you have videos? Do you have posters? Do you have a hands-on experience? This is where you're differentiating based on how you create your activities, but also how you differentiate your scaffolds as well, and how you put them all together, because you know what you want them to do, so then you can create backwards on how you want them to show that knowledge. So ultimately, when you look at these 2 models, not only are they differentiating the way that students are being assessed or the activities that they're using or learning with, but they're also providing scaffolds or opportunities to include scaffolds that allow students to be successful on those final outcomes. We're building on their background knowledge by addressing it in the beginning and throughout, and also just being very culturally responsive to making those real world connections inside and outside of the classroom. So at the end here, I'm going to move my little person. At the end here, you can see the different resources and references that I included in this presentation. I highly recommend looking at some of these resources so that you can really get a better understanding of how to design your classroom in a way that meets the needs of all of our students. If you cannot access these links right here, there is a QR code for you that you can access. And then also the list of resources is on the bottom for you as well. I appreciate you joining me today. I hope you've learned lots and have taken something away from it. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.